Welcome back to Pie the Corner. My name's Pat,
And I'm Shane.
and it's time to rock and roll. How you doing, Shane?
Rocking and rolling pie the corner style.
Yeah. What does that actually entail?
um, well, a little bit of rocking and a whole lot of rolling.
Yeah, and some
Yeah.
Mando action in the
Or
background.
actually, it's probably a whole lot of rocking and a little bit of rolling. I said it backwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, things are good. Not a lot going on with me, but obviously we're going through our little our winter right now, and it's not a whole lot to do. I'm just trying to you know stay busy around the house and shit, but I'm kind of getting bored.
Yeah, man, it's cold as a witch's teat, as my mom used to say. And quite odd for this time of well, not odd for this time of year, but odd how cold it is. And like I have these bushes in the back of my apartment complex, and they're like completely tipped over from the weight of the ice uh, on the leaves and branches. So it's pretty crazy down here. But and same with you, just kind of bored sitting around inside all the time, even though there's not much to do anyways. I guess with the COVID going on.
Well, it's cutting into my bike rides and stuff. That's the main thing. Even if you're not doing shit, you get a little exercise in, you feel so much better, and
Oh man,
not able to do that right now.
so true,
Uh,
so true.
I was listening to the news earlier today, and I mean, you know how the news is so sensationalist, especially local news. Like when it comes to the weather and everything.
Right.
And this guy was like describing the legal or not the legal, but the definition of what a blizzard is. And it has something to do with only a quarter of a mile visibility and winds over, 20 or 30 miles an hour for a sustained period, like 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's what blizzard conditions means. And he's like saying, we may be facing a technical blizzard here in Austin, Texas. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not going to happen, dude. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean
I'll tell
they
you,
were. Go ahead.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you two things that are not, it's not going to get near as cold as they say it's going to get. And it's not going to snow near as much as they say it's going to snow. It
I was
happens
just
this,
gonna say.
it happens that way every time, man, because that's what keeps those fucking viewers glued to the TV,
Right.
These
Right.
it's that same fear thing. They do everything, man, but the weather really gets people going.
Well, the milk is gone up here at Randall's and HEB. Like people like went and rated HEB, and I'm just like, it's 4 days. You need
Hmm.
1 gallon of milk for four. I mean, depending on size of your family, but I'm just like, dude, it's 4 days. It's and by next Wednesday, this will all be melted. Whatever snows is going to be gone. But yeah, it's funny because they were talking about like 7 to 8 inches of snow, and I'm like, no, we'll be lucky
Nah.
to get one or two, and it might be
Hmm.
it could be a little crazy, but we had that one snow a couple months ago and or a month and a half
Hmm.
ago, and by the next day it pretty much all melted off, and so yeah, it's
I
it's
mean,
it's all sensationalist shit.
the big story here is like we're basically at or below freezing for like 7 days straight.
Yeah.
That's the story. That's tough as fuck for people like us to deal with. It's just we're used to like maybe 1 or 2 days of cold and then warm sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I suppose this, I would say that there's some correlation to, global warming type shit. I think this is, I mean, that being said, they said that the last time it was that cold was like 1948. So, I mean, it's not like this is
Yeah,
unheard of, but
it's
it's,
yeah, it happens. It seems to happen, I don't know, once every 30 or 50 years or something. But it's funny you mentioned that, the whole global warming. These days, it occurred to me earlier today that this could be part of this global climatic disruption that they refer to it these days that they refer to it as these days because they're trying to shift the conversation a little bit from just global warming because some place will be cooler, some place will be warmer, some place will be wetter, some place will be drier. It's just basically like a global cataclysmic clusterfuck, and we don't know which direction it's going to take.
yeah, it is like that. I mean, and I base it on a lot on places I've lived. And if I look at the weather of those places now, I mean, for instance, I grew up in Iowa
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they're getting some snow now, but I mean, I remember it being a lot more snowy more
Mm-hmm.
often and it is. And certainly, even my mom, who still lives up there, says that too. She's like, yeah, I mean, usually we get a lot more snow than we get now, and it's cold still, but it's not. And, they have a blizzard once in a while, but we used to have snow on the ground pretty much at least
Well,
3/4 of the winter time.
yeah,
Half.
what they used to refer to as like when the ground froze. The
Yeah.
ground doesn't freeze over anymore and like stay frozen. As well as I do that I have family from your neck of the woods too, and I hear this regularly from Midwesterners that the ground doesn't really freeze anymore in the winter. And my grandma would talk about it. She said the same thing, and she was probably saying these things to me about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it
Like
wasn't
starting to notice it. Yeah.
yeah, she had already noticed it, and she swore that things were different than they used to be. And a lot of the naysayers say, well, that's just part of normal variation. But old people like her have, they have a pretty good sample size,
Yeah.
And also there's that gut feeling, it's like, don't underestimate that gut feeling. We know, dude. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think
It's
that
like
that's
they tell us we don't know, but we know, dude. And if you
yeah.
know, you know. That's a
Yeah.
whole other thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's almost sometimes more powerful than just hearing it, because that's the thing. Something's different. Like I feel like something's different here in Texas. We had that one summer, I think 2011, where it was like 100 degrees for like 98 days or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like really crazy. And I know that it gets hot down here, but that was a little bit over the top, and then now I'm seeing this, like, it's colder in the wintertime for a little bit longer, feels like, and we have more of these weird ice storm kind of things. And
Mm-hmm.
that snow, I mean, I've been in Austin for 15 years. That snow was the most I've ever seen here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
That
think
was a lot.
I don't think I've ever seen the ground covered in snow here. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time. It was like 6 inches of snow. Now, can it happen randomly? Sure, but there's something there that it feels different. I mean, and I think it's one of those things where as time goes by in the next 10, 15 years, we're really going to start to see shit like that pop off a little bit more. And people are like, well, what's the big deal? It's just a little cold. It's like, yeah, but at some point it starts to affect how crops grow. It starts to affect where people live and things like that. And things start to migrations happens, water shortages, and
Mm-hmm.
it could potentially get really messed up in the next 10 years or so, I think.
It will, dude. It's 100% going to, and we're just gonna have to deal with the facts on the ground. There is no way that there's going to be this orchestrated effort to get the whole
Yeah.
world to change its behavior and consumption habits. That's kind of anathema to what capitalism wants us to do anyway. And that's what the big fucking battle is, dude.
Mhm.
Conservation versus consumption.
Yeah.
And consumption wins, dude, because human beings, if they're any one thing, they're freaking consumers. And I'm not talking about, in the capitalist sense of consuming. We consume everything. That's all we do is just consume, We're just
Yeah.
great consumers, and we're going to consume the fucking planet. I'm sure of it, I'm sure of it, dude. You look at history and you look at every civilization that's ever faded, we're learning more and more about them. And so many of them, it was due to climatic catastrophe. They outgrew their resource base, and to a point where, some sort of like feedback mechanism happens, and they lose all their water, or they lose their food supply, and you can see we're on that trajectory. I don't think there's any way to stop it. So that kind of begs the question, like, what do we do if there's no way to stop it? Like, do we just say fuck it, and just go on our merry business, or do we, like Elon Musk is proposing,
Start to populate
interplanetary travel, inter
Yeah.
interplanetary travel,
Yeah.
and within our solar system and even within our galaxy. That's what I was just trying to split out, because he sees that as really the only solution. And I'm a very much an optimist, Dave, but I'm also a realist. You think about how many times in our conversations where I'm just like, we're all going to dance together at the end. You know,
Yeah.
this is not one of those cases, dude. I mean, do you tend to agree with me on a simplistic level?
I do. I mean, I think believe me, there's nothing more than I would want than to be able to do like interplanetary travel. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that kind of thing. Like we need to keep moving forward. Now, I mean, he's pretty optimistic that it's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, but
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, I hope you have some
Well,
technology ideas that are going to be able to sustain
oh,
that
hold that thought.
level.
Yeah, hold that thought. But what I was asking you was not just do you believe that we will do interplanetary travel, or we will need to do it? Do you think that we're basically just gonna destroy the planet, like no matter what?
Oh, yeah, I was going to get to
Okay,
that.
I
And
just really wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
no,
But go on,
actually,
go on. I'm
thanks for
sorry. I'm
bringing me,
sorry.
thanks for bringing
Hmm.
me back onto the track because the truth is I do think that that is in our future, and the reason is because we rarely ever do anything we have to do until the last moment, and that's what's going to happen. It'll be something that some major cataclysm will occur, and then they're going to be like, oh wow, I guess this is real, and then you're going to start to see the corporate level changes where there's a few small things and they're like, well, we're thinking about going to renewable energy and we're thinking about this, but it's like they're not going to do it until the absolute last moment, and then and at that point it's too late. And there's a they talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There will be a point where food and water and resources like that are going to become scarce, and people eat each other at those points. I mean, it gets violent, it gets really scary, and yes, I do believe that we're consuming things out of a need to. I mean, I think it's kind of based on the topic we talking about today. Like everybody wants to be happy, so they think they have to have everything to be happy and keep consuming to do that. And yeah, I mean, there's a finite level of resources in our world.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, there's part of me that looks at the way, like if you look at a map and you go, well, there's a lot of empty space. Like in the U.S., for instance, most people are clustered in these urban areas, but same in the world. But then who owns the rest of it? Certainly not the people. It's hard to go out and just buy land somewhere, start a farm. You don't know have the skills to do that. It's going to be tough. I mean, there's going to be a lot of moving out of the cities over the next 10, 15 years. It's already started, really, based on
Hmm.
what's
Yeah.
happening now. And what that's going to look like, I have no idea. I mean, I suppose there's some futurists that do have an idea, but it ain't going to be pretty. And that's the thing is like a father or somebody I have kids, that scares the shit out of me because I'm just like how do I even prepare them for that kind of life, or that livelihood or whatever. And it might be something that doesn't pop off, in 15, 20 years, but once it does, it's going to be like, what do they call that? It's like a tipping point where things are kind of like this, and then all of a sudden something happens and it
Hmm.
just, everything kind of flies down. So yes, I do agree with you. The short short
Yeah.
answer.
I just wanted to mention that because I'm an optimist, dude, and I've always, maybe it's just that I'm getting older, or maybe the reality is changing around me, or I'm changing the way that I look at it. But it seems to me, in the past, I believed that we would change our ways and basically just get our shit together. I think that there could be a collective will globally, but our leaders have failed us and they will fail us forever because they're not altruistic leaders. They're they just hold power. They have no interest in the betterment of all or whatever. So that's where I've had this shift in my thinking. Basically, if it was left up to us, I think we would make it happen. And but then you have to ask yourself: is there truly a collective global will to contest the power of the people that are not doing it? In the past, I would have said yeah, but I'm really, really kind of fatalistic with regards to that now. It's kind of interesting.
And I think that there's a pretty large portion of population too that's not those people that also are against it. Like they've been sort of propagandized to believe that it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean to the point of thinking like this is a George Soros funded thing to take over all the land and force inoculate people and then start the mass culling of the world. I mean, this is where their minds, a lot of people's minds have gone now. And so good luck getting those people around because they to come around because they like the feeling of saying no. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Or no, I'm not going to be part of the solution to that,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like that's a form of rebellion. And this is why I'm with you. I don't see how would be possible to make a concerted effort for enough people to say, no, we're going to do this, whether you like it or not, because everything has been sort of maneuvered to wrap people around certain ideologies. And there is they talk about the difference between like a conservative mindset and a liberal mindset. Conservatives are more conscientious and more apt towards an authoritarian bent, whereas liberals are more open and willing to be agreeable. So I don't know if that's something that's innate in people, or if they're taught that. But I think that that's where we're going to have a real problem with this stuff is getting, someone who's completely bent on authoritarian type conscientiousness and, the black and white type thing and whatever. How do you change somebody's mind like that? They almost have to have their own mind changed
Mm-hmm.
by their own actions. That's the only way it works. And
Yeah, I
for
think they
them,
do.
it's going to take like, oh, there's tornadoes all year round now, and we have to hide underground before they go, oh, okay, maybe there is a problem here. That's just my
See,
take on it.
but
But
you're giving me a speck of hope right there, just a tiny speck of hope, because people can learn and they can change their mind and they can change their behavior. They do it all the time on a daily basis. Um, so I just don't know, man.
yeah,
It's real interesting.
yeah, it's a tough time. It's interesting. It's like there's the old Chinese proverb or curse, "May you live in interesting times," and I guess these are probably the most interesting times of my lifetime. Um, I mean, is that a good thing? Probably not. It'd be nice
Hmm.
if things were a little bit less crazy like that. But it's one of the things I guess that made me start to think about happiness and what does it mean to be happy in our world. And I just started, and I thought it'd be a great topic because I feel like there's always a sense that I have of you know the at least for my life growing up, I never really felt like having a bunch of stuff and being rich was ever going to make me feel happy because I had seen a lot of people, whether they're friends, families, or stories I've read or things like that, where the people that do have all the wealth and all the possessions are really not happy at all. They just keep wanting more. And so I don't know. I was just, it's a curious thing for me to think of, where do people draw a line and say like, I'm happy enough or I'm not happy at all or whatever. And how does that, kind of feed into how they make decisions in life. And they can be coerced into going to the Capitol and storming the Capitol because they're not happy because there are a lot of people that were there that were, in financial distress. And I don't know, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my own life too. Like, am I happy where I'm at? Do I feel like I could do something else and be happier? I mean, probably, and so I don't know. I don't know what your take on that whole topic is, but I don't know. Just something I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
ruminating on lately.
Well, it kind of ties together with what we were talking about before. This consumption thing that human beings are. To answer your question, are they happy? Are they sad? They are definitely sad. They're definitely unhappy. Uh, and people are trying to use external stimuli to make them feel good, but unfortunately that's only fleeting. It's only momentary. And so you have to do it over and over and over again to, basically fool yourself into thinking that you're succeeding and that you're happy. So that's kind of the situation we're at. People are not happy. I think it's probably like you hear a lot that it's kind of a spiritual emptiness. I'm not talking about organized religion or anything, but like a sense of worth or meaning in life. Is it truly just to sit in front of a computer and produce for somebody else for the majority of your waking hours? Well, the reality is, yes, it is that, but it doesn't have to be that, and a lot of people don't want it to be that. Okay, so we have this happiness thing where you got to pump yourself up full of endorphins, whether it's shopping or drugs or whatever you do.
Or exercise.
Yeah, exercise pops in. Yeah, but a lot of people go crazy on that exercise route too, and they have they exhibit behaviors that remind you of like a junkie, man. It's really weird, and but it's all symptomatic of the same thing. I really looked forward to kind of discussing some of these ideas with you, because we both kind of have had our gloomy past, and we've kind of had and embraced our ups and downs of our life. And I look at us as both pretty upbeat people that get bummed out every once in a while. But I think it's because we have a heart and we pay attention, and we feel things. I'll speak for myself, but I'm pretty much sure I know I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about. So I've had to do a lot of thinking in the past about how I feel and ask myself how I feel, or why do I feel depressed, or why do I feel sad, or why do I feel unsatisfied or unhappy? I think it's normal to feel dissatisfied, dude. Especially if you're just sitting there not doing anything. Like, even in the moment, not doing anything, we get satisfaction by accomplishing things. Okay, that's why we have hobbies. That's why we exercise. That's on and on and on. That is how I found that I really can create moments of happiness in my life, is by doing things and finishing things. And you know how much you just love yourself when you just do something, like after an episode of this podcast, you're like, yeah, I feel good. I just did something. We did it. We're doing it. We've been doing it for a year. Yeah. Or you pick up your instrument and you play for an hour, even if you didn't want to. And what you didn't want to because you felt bad because you weren't doing anything. You pick up that guitar and you play, you force your way through it. And then all of a sudden you feel like a new man, and you're just like, you're marching around the house, your heart's beating, and you're happy. That's what I'm saying. You're happy. Yeah. But happy is not this place. I really think it's just this momentary thing that just comes and goes. And if you're a thoughtful person like me, you can play tricks on yourself to make yourself in a better mood. And I don't even know if it is playing tricks, dude. I think that might just be the way you do it, Yeah, but a lot of people aren't as systematic as me. They just live their lives. But I'm just like, well, if I do number 1, 2, 3, and 4 and do it like this, this, and this, I'll get to there and then I'll be happy. That's fucking ludicrous, but you know what I mean.
Well, I do. And it's interesting because I was thinking back, like over, preparing for this to have the discussion of like, when was I as a child, say, when was I happy, or when did I feel like I was happy? And I can remember images and feelings of, say, 11, 12 years old, maybe the summer before 6th grade, or maybe the summer before 7th grade. And when I grew up, middle school was 7th grade, 8th grade, and then 9th grade, you start high school. So I had good friends, it was the summer, we were out playing sports, we were doing sleepovers, and my friends were good people. Like, we treated each other well, and we supported each other, and we had a good little friend group, and the neighborhood was open. We were out riding our bikes. And I remember being happy, being content. and I could go home and my home life was good. My parents worked, but they were happy. They seemed happy, and they seemed content. It was just a good time. And then, seventh grade, starting of middle school, was when young teenagers like 12, 13 are fucking mean, first of all, and they're really good at being mean. And it's that first moment where you're out in the world and you're able to kind of more starkly kind of control your environment. And one of the ways that young teen boys do that is ripping on each other and making fun of each other. And I was a victim of that. And, I don't look at it as, I don't say I was a victim. It sucked. And I certainly felt like shit about it because they were my friends, but they were, it was kind of cruel stuff. And those kids that age know how to say things that pick that thing, and they know how to push your buttons, I guess you could say. And so I didn't really feel like I was too happy from, say, seventh grade through until I left high school. I had moments of happiness because I was in high school. I was playing music. I was playing guitar. I was in a band. So I had good moments of, we'd play music every night and play. And I was enjoying that. Like, music made me happy. It was really the only thing, because I was not good with women. With girls, I didn't have like a girlfriend. The girls that I liked didn't like me, that kind of thing. And so I had the blues, I guess you'd say. I was full of that shit. But when I got out of high school and I moved to Chicago, and I didn't go to college right away, moved to Chicago, I then felt content and happy again. And I was traveling and doing things like that. And I think about it, and I think you hit it on the head. I made a choice to do something, and I went and did it. And it wasn't because, the initial thought was, oh, okay, I'll be a rock star and I'll be famous, and then I'll get back at all these people that made me feel bad. But it turned out that the journey itself was what made me happy. Being out there, I didn't have a lot. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of, a lot of friendship, companionship kind of thing going on, because I was alone a lot. But I was happy because I was out there doing the thing that I loved the most, which was playing music. And, and I could go on because there are different moments, different places I lived, that I found that joy in accomplishing what I set out to do, which was travel, play music, be in bands, get to know people. I finally found some confidence, was able to have a couple girlfriends here and there, and, came to Austin, met some other people here. And it was like a satisfaction there. And then, that lasted a while. Then I went to college, and I found a lot of satisfaction in learning and accomplishing the goals of college, like, going through each year and doing well and getting out of it. And then it was like, kind of like, all of a sudden the music stuff sort of drifted away, and it was like, okay, now I have to get a job. And then it was, then I had kids, and that was like another thing that you had to do that, wasn't planned per se, but it was like, I made a choice to be a good dad, as good as I could be. And then, if, you find yourself in a position where you're like, now I'm in my late 40s, and I'm like, well, is there a chance to change anymore? Am I satisfied? I don't know. So I bring all that up. So I was going to ask you, like, what was your kind of journey of ups and downs and
Oh
happiness?
man, I have to tell you, your little thing with seventh grade. I mean, the second you spit it out of your mouth, I think that must be a universal thing uh, for young men. For me, it was sixth grade. It's basically leaving elementary school and going into junior high, middle school. Okay, you go from that. You go from a small pond into a bigger pond or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that first
And
step.
it's really daunting. And usually, hear me out on this. Usually, elementary schools are kind of neighborhood based, whereas like everybody that goes to that elementary school lives in your neighborhood. At least the way it was in Houston. Once you got to the junior high and then the high school, it'd be a whole bunch of other neighborhoods that would come together. And for the first time in your life, you'd be at a school where you didn't know everybody. But so that's a little bit daunting. But most importantly for me, It was the first time I became aware of wealth disparity.
Mm.
Okay. You don't, it you don't see it in elementary school. Maybe it's the age that you are, maybe it's, I don't know. But the second I got into sixth grade, I was immediately made aware that I was poor, dude. And basically, as a result of me being poor, I was a loser and an outsider because this junior high, half of it, was from one side of the tracks and half of it was from the rich side of town. And these rich motherfuckers just had so much confidence and like power. They just like ran the school from day one. And
Mhm.
we were like the losers. So to your point, I lost my confidence, dude.
Yep.
Uh,
That's a good way to put it. Me too.
and it
Just
took me a long time to piece that back together. And I haven't spent any time thinking about this as an adult, but basically, I was a victim of bullying. Maybe not in the real classic proverbial sense where the big dude, comes and busts you down, but I was humiliated, dude.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I was shamed. And it made me feel inadequate about myself, and it made me doubt and second guess myself in ways that I never had before. And once again, to your point, that didn't end until high school ended. I spent probably 2 years in high school just wishing high school would end. Not that I was like super miserable, but I just knew what bullshit it was. And I just could not wait till that whole cliquish thing was done and to just kind of enter the real world, because I knew that once you enter the real world, people like you and me rise up. And like
Hmm.
the fake losers, they crash and burn,
Hmm.
because there's no substance to them. That's why there's this, all these people like you and me, like these late bloomers, or, it took me a while to find out who I was. Maybe that's because we were being beat down by all these fucking losers, and we had to basically piece ourselves back together after the public education system. I don't know, man.
No, I think you actually might have hit on it to me, and it goes to like the means of happiness is really confidence. What breeds confidence? Accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
That breeds confidence, and it breeds that ability to look at yourself and know that I'm starting this thing. I know I may not know exactly how to get to the end of it, but I know that I can figure it out. And gaining that accomplishment makes you feel confident. And my God, dude, like I think you hit it on the nail for me, because going to Chicago was a huge deal for even for people that were my friends that were like, they all were going to college. It was like they couldn't, most people I knew. I mean, I would say everybody I knew. I didn't know anybody else that was going to do what I was going to do. That was just like, because it was like, well, after high school, you go to college and then you get a job and then you get married, and like the classic thing. And I knew I wasn't going to be part of that. I knew I couldn't be part of that. Like I didn't feel like that. So making that just that like hold my breath and go and jump into Chicago, which was like going from a town of 80,000 people to to a city of 2 million. I immediately, it took me actually a few months to get used to like being in this big city and being like, holy fuck, this is crazy. To having a moment of like, I did that. I made that choice and I did it. And then I started doing all this traveling, and it was like another thing that people I knew didn't do, because then they were in college, so they couldn't go travel around like I was doing. And so I found accomplishment there, and like I'm not scared to go to a new city that I've never been to. I'll go there just like I did Chicago. Fuck it, let's do it. Like I know some
Mm-hmm.
people there, but I'm gonna go there and meet new people and make my way in a city I've never been to. And it kind of shrunk the world. Whereas like, you go from that little pond to the bigger pond, that scares the shit out of you, and it kills your confidence. But when you over time you learn how to deal with that, you get confident, and then you find some happiness there. And maybe some of the sense I'm getting lately of of kind of not feeling so satisfied or so confident is because I went from that big pond into a smaller pond again and realized that the smaller pond was already its own ecosystem, and I was just sort of like the big fish swimming around, not fitting into that, and not feeling like I fit into a corporate structure or something. Like I could do it, but I also didn't get like as much satisfaction as I did accomplishing things that aren't, generally known to be common, like getting into a band a few years ago and feeling accomplishment that I did that. But dude, no, I thank you for that. Cause I think that that's a lot of it is where do you get your confidence from? Like I'm single, I'm a 47-year-old single, essentially divorced person. And a lot of times people get confidence from a partner, from somebody they're married to, and it's like they get that confidence of like, you can do it. But like, I don't really have that right now. I mean, I do want that, but I mean, so I don't really have that, and I'm not playing in a band. So I don't, doing this podcast, this is kind of the thing. This is my confidence build. Cause like you said, when we're done with it, I'm like, it's like how I used to feel playing for 2 hours, like you kind of get done and you're like, okay. Like you almost feel like a different person, so that's
Well,
great.
just to continue on what you're saying, I talked about like sense of purpose and meaning and stuff, and I think that's where people tend to feel so lost. They don't know where their place is or what their part to play is. You know, like so many times when the part you play is an office worker behind a computer screen, yeah, you chose that as a means to an end to make the money you want to make, but that would never be your dream. And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about anybody.
Sure.
That would never be where people thought their place was or what their role was to play on planet Earth. Okay. So it leaves people quite disillusioned. And, I think my best solution to that would be look for avenues outside of the workplace to kind of find your satisfaction if you are going to continue to make that choice and go do something every day that you don't want to do. And it's really ironic that I give this advice because I've never worked in an office before in my life, but I pay attention and I've watched The Office, hey, so I know what I'm talking about.
You watch The Office, you know it all. How it goes.
Um,
The Office.
but but anyways, this thing about meaning and sense of purpose is the root of it all. And what I was really just going to say is human beings are here to be creative, dude. We're here to create.
Yeah.
And this is what we keep saying. When I do this, or when I'm doing something, that's what we're doing. We're being creative beings. We are being creatures. Okay. That's the solution, dude. We just need to be who we are and what we are. And to me, that's creative beings. And anytime that is stifled, it's like our inner being rebels against it because and we get really sick spiritually, psychologically, and physically because we're not being fulfilling our true nature. And it's deep shit, but really just do it, baby. Just do it. Nike had it right all those years ago.
Right. I mean, that's why that was such a huge
Mm-hmm.
thing. Is it's true.
They nailed it. They nailed it, dude.
Well, and I think you brought it up before. It's one of the things I think probably a lot of people deal with is you see your guitar sitting there, and you're like, damn, I know I'd feel good if I played it, but for some reason, I don't for whatever reason that day, and or whatever you're doing, painting or writing poetry or writing or whatever somebody does. Or, and then there's people that just work 70 hours a week because they know that they're like, for them, like that is satisfaction, is the constant movement of getting stuff done at work, or something. And that achievement of, whether it's money or, a car or whatever, or a house. But it's interesting to me to think of, you know, like it's easy to, it might be easy to pick up a guitar and play, but it's like, what's my end goal here? Is it just a hobby? You know?
No, it's not. And something occurred to me, and you know that this is spot on. The ultimate reason why I won't, when I'm finding resistance and picking up my instrument, is because I don't want to face myself, dude. I don't want to take a moment with myself. And I think that's it for everybody, dude. It's just when you play an instrument, you're taking time out and saying, I'm gonna have a really intimate moment with myself. Okay. And that can be really heavy. And when we do it all the time, it's not, that's why it's important to play all the time, because you don't have this big moment of like, okay, I'm going to face myself. But when you haven't played in a few weeks, you're like, am I ready for this? I don't know if I'm ready for this, you know? Okay. And so the Bob Marley song Running Away comes to mind. You know, you're running and you're running and you're running away, but you can't run away from yourself. Okay. This was one of the most meaningful songs that I heard out of all the songs I heard in my 20s, because I was like, that's me. That's me. Yeah. That's what everybody spends their life doing, running and running and running. What are they running from? Themselves. Okay.
Yeah, dude. So true. Because man, I mean, you know, for musicians or anybody that does something creative, that there are those times when I'm playing like a 2-hour session or practicing or playing, where I have some dark shit that comes out, like just in my mind, you know, like I can think of like some dark shit. And that's what it is. It's a purge. The playing of the music is the purge, but to purge, you have to deal with, you have to look at, you have to view it and then let it go. And I think that that's so true. I think you hit it again on the head. Like you're on fire today, sir.
Well, another lyric from that song is, "Who feels it knows it, Lord. Who feels it knows it." There's this other saying, in order to heal, you have to feel. That's what you're talking about right there, is this purge and this processing of emotion. What do they mean when they say, you know, I have to process it? You have to feel it internally and then expel it.
And it's tough because, well, like you said, I mean, it's, you know, it builds up over time. And maybe that's what keeps you from doing it, because you're like, dude, I have so much shit to work through right now, and I don't want to work through it.
You don't even want to open that door, because you don't know what you'll see there, dude. You don't know what you'll find there. You're like, I'm just gonna keep that closet closed for a little while longer, because you know it's like a closet. It's like your storage closet, you know, that's so full of shit that every time you open it, shit just tumbles out.
So you don't even quick and throw it in
so then you're like, no, don't open that. Don't open that. Just, you don't even want to see what happened if you open that.
Oh my God. Because when you do open it, it all spills out and then you have to clean it up.
Right. But how nice is it to have a freshly organized closet where when you open the door, you can see where everything is and nothing falls.
It's a happy moment,
baby.
It's a happy moment, man.
God. I never compared my mind to a closet before.
Well, it's really apt though. It's really apt. I mean, it's you know, and this whole thing that everyone's going through right now, this global thing, it has taken away, like, think of all these poor musicians and artists and people out there that were making their living that way. Like that shit is gone for them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and I'm sitting here like struggling with my own inability to jump in there and do it. Like, imagine what all these other people are going through. Like they're like, now they're like literally like, how am I going to make a living? You know,
well, you know,
Jesus, dude.
We know two people personally that basically are on the road playing live music for, you know, 2/3 of the year at least. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was, and not only was their way of making a living, like they sitting around their house doing nothing now. Like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Go from traveling, you know, the United States or the world, you know, 2 out of 3, you know, 4 or 5 out of 7 days of the week, to just sitting at your house for a year straight. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why I'm doing okay. You know, everybody was asking, are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? How are you taking this? And, you know, yeah, ups and downs, but I'm doing okay. Because I didn't lose that much, really. You know, I miss my weekend work, but I only worked on the weekends before anyway, you know.
Well, I mean, I think at the end you were kind of doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday through Sunday, basically,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
Wednesday through Sunday or
Well,
something.
I had all those people working for me, but anyways, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I can keep things in perspective, and you know
Sure.
what? 2020 ended. 2021 will end too. Life goes on. Time marches on, and we'll be fine, assuming we don't die.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. Um, what about like age? What do you feel like, you and I are real close in age. We're right at our 50s.
Hmm.
I mean, for me, always the thing that bothered me was this idea of how everyone kind of has to, and it ends up in a role, in their life. And, in the sense of the universe, it's like our time on Earth is a blip. I mean, it's like barely a blip. It's 80 years is like that's roughly is the expected life expectancy of a male. 78 in the U.S. Whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's just like, man, like how much time of our lives do we? I mean, I don't want to say waste because I mean, there are some beautiful things that you can do as by helping out and working a job and having kids and things like that. And I love my kids, and that's like
Hmm.
everything. And I would never leave them. I would never like consciously like go, well, I need to go off and do my thing. You're gonna have to deal with it because I've seen what that can do to people. You know, but I mean, it's just interesting because you know, when you're in your 20s, you feel like you have all the time in the world. And then
Hmm.
when you're in your 30s, you're like, well, I better get something done. And
Hmm.
then it just and then all of a sudden you're 45 or 50 and it's just like holy shit. Like I'm like sitting here like I'm past middle age now.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just and
Yeah.
it's like is there still time kind of thing, I guess, is the question. Do you ever feel that?
Well, obviously, there's no quick way to answer that question. I'll just riff on it for a second. So I turned 50, what, about 5 months ago, 6 months ago. And it makes you contemplative, you know. I wouldn't say that like turning 50 is any different than turning 48, but you know, it's a bigger number, and it does seem to be some kind of threshold that you cross. Um, I'll tell you this, it's the first time in my life that I looked at myself and said, what am I going to do for the next 20 years?
Mhm.
Meaning, like, dude, let's carve this 20 years up and make a plan, because this 20 years is all I have, and what do I want to accomplish in the next 20 years? I
Mhm.
didn't do that at 18, I didn't do that at 30, I didn't do that at 40, I didn't do it at 45. I have done it now.
Good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it felt good to do that. Uh, Once again, I was a late bloomer, man. I had a lot of, I had a personal journey that I had to go on in order to be the person that I am today. And as kind of opaque and weird as that sounds, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to come back around. So I didn't start in my early 20s. There's just no way it couldn't happen. I was a mess in my early 20s. Uh, it's just really satisfying to, man, I just 20 years, dude. You can look at it. Okay, I can do this. I want to have this done in 5 years. I want to have this done in 10 years. And just think about how quick the last 10 years went, man.
Mm.
Like, say, 38 to 48 or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to assume, like, you're not even going to have time to plan this last 20 years. It's like you're just going to
You better get to
snap your
work.
fingers. It's going to be gone. And you're basically going to be sick and dying.
Man, it's you're on fire today, sir. Anyways, I have two things to kind of comment on that. So like I've always had this thing like sometimes if I can't sleep at night, I to help me go to sleep, I'll think about what would I do right now if I woke up in my bed in my house when I was like 2 weeks from beginning freshman year in high school. And I know everything I know now. And I literally just go back in time, but I go back and, I'm that age, that body, and I know everything I know now. What would I do different? And then I stop myself and I go, well, now what would your 60 year, you know, 68-year-old self say about where you are now? Like just what you said, 20 years from now for me.
Hmm.
Like, what would you want to be saying about yourself when you're 68 where you are now, which is just a way of saying like, hey, you have to start now. Like you have to get it going now. And like the same thing I would have done then, I'd get in shape immediately. Get yourself physically healthy so that you're not worrying about the shit that happens when you get in your 50s and you see people start work, with canes and dealing with all the shit that they did when they were 30, and what would make you happy to talk about, just like you make a plan, like get on it because it's time's happening, So yeah, I think it's really important to not waste any time because it does go by in a blink of an eye, And I forgot the second thing I was going to say, but I mean, yeah, I think it's like I'm just glad to hear that you have thought of that and made those plans because I'm at that point too where I'm just like it's not over. I mean, it could be over in a second, but I mean, you have to make choices and decide what does it look like in 20 years, What do you look back on in 20 years? How do you want to be sitting there going, wow, that was a ride. That the last 20 years when you're 68 or 70, go, man, what a ride. I'm so glad I took those steps, and don't waste your time because it is a blink of an eye, but it's also, there's ways to make things happen now oh yeah. The second thing, the one thing that I think you and I really suffered from, and I'm a late bloomer too, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have like somebody outside of my parents that could be like, when I'm sitting in Chicago, starting to struggle a little bit, even though I was playing music a lot and doing all those things and I was struggling, I was like, oh, I'm going to run back home or I'm just going to go to college. I needed somebody to go, this is where it gets hard. But if you make it through this right now, what you're about to go through, which was like basically homelessness, which I wasn't going to be homeless. I had a place like a friend's house I could have crashed at. If I had just stuck with it and struggled through that and kept going and kept pushing and had somebody to tell me that, and I don't want to, say like I absolutely would have done it if somebody had done that, but I didn't have a mentor. I had to figure all of it out on my own. I had to go by just stories I'd heard and things that I'd done before that didn't work or did. And that was it. I didn't have anybody to say, hey, stick it out, man. Just stick it out. I know it's going to suck for a year or two, but if you stick it out and keep doing what you're doing right now, which was playing 3-4 nights a week, you're gonna be okay. But again, I all I knew was like, this really fucking sucks. And I don't want to put myself through this, even though now I look back and I wish I did, you know what I mean? So
I do. I used to spend a ton of time when I was younger, probably teenage years into my 20s, yearning for that same mentor that you're talking about, just wanting a teacher, just really wanting somebody to kind of look out for me or take me under their wing and kind of point the path, show the path, or answer my questions. I always had these questions that couldn't be answered before the internet, and I always had these moments of reckoning where I'd be like, why didn't somebody tell me that sooner? Or, I wish somebody would have told me that sooner. Whereas I think people that have only ever lived with the internet don't have any clue what that really means to walk around on this planet and not have the answer to something. I mean, there's some things, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Kind of trivial stuff. You have the answer in your pocket, but it wasn't always the case. And it led you and me to do a lot of searching and a lot of struggling. And I think we came out of it on the other side better because of it. But man, I couldn't agree with you more. I wanted that. I reached a point where I quit wanting that. And I there's a part of me that wonders if these mentors and teachers even exist. They do, but there's not very many of them. And it kind of leads you to the point of, man, wouldn't that just be great? There's just needs to be more mentors in the world. And there's lots of organizations that provide mentorship to kids and stuff. Hell, Big Brothers, whatever. Yeah. I'd like to be a part of that because I know how much it's needed for some, and especially me. I had a pretty sad excuse for a father figure, and young boys need a male figure to kind of look up to and kind of mentor them, whether it's your father or not. I had neither, and that sucks, and I really wouldn't wish that on anybody. A couple other things you were talking about, what would you tell 18-year-old you or whatever? I read that on Twitter a lot. People say something like, if you could go back to 18-year-old you and tell them just 3 words, what would you tell them? And I read that this morning. And stream of consciousness, the first thing that came to my mind was, don't do it. Because I've lived a very kind of hedonistic, adventurous, lack of personal responsibility lifestyle for my younger years, but partly because it was an extended adolescence. But don't do it is not really my advice. It could be my advice on one day. But what my real advice would be to trust yourself. You know, like what you think you really know, but you won't know that until you're 30 and you look back and you're like, you know what? I was fucking right. I wish I would have known I was right, but I just didn't believe in myself. So that's it. Believe in yourself. That is really, really, really what I wish I could go back and tell my young me. And that was my fatal flaw, man, is whenever I told you it kind of happened in junior high, I lost confidence in myself. And until I fucking believed in myself, and that makes you fucking happy. You see that shit?
Yes.
Dude.
I think that's a great way to end this podcast. Believe in yourself, because really, I think that is the key to it. It's not going to be the money, not going to be the car. I mean, those things for a second will give you happiness. The high paying job, all that. But if you don't believe in yourself amongst all of that, it can work. That's a great way to say it. Believe in yourself.
Who would have thunk it?
Right. Something so simple. Well, thanks for listening, everybody out there. And thanks again for joining us here at Pie of the Corner. Again, check us out on all of our podcasting platforms. Check us out on YouTube. We're going to add some, Shane's been added some a clip on there. We're going to try and do some more of that just so you can get little sound bites and stuff like that. But check us out, like us, subscribe, give us feedback. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.